Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to risk, resilience, cyber, business continuity, anything that can help you, your organization, or your community respond to, prepare for, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Now, saying that, today's guest did exactly that, reached out. So I brought them on the show, and we are going to talk about a few things today: risk, resilience, artificial intelligence, risk assessments, metrics, and competitive advantage. And I'd like to welcome to the show today, David Young. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Alex. It's really exciting to get the chance to speak to you and also your audience and fellow resilience professionals. I always uh, get really passionate about talking about what we do and how we can do it much more innovative and really shift the kind of the old paradigms. I'm one of those guys who likes to break the status quo and try new things. So being able to get some of these ideas out, and the more people that can use them and try them, the more proof of their effectiveness we can have. So,
Well, perfect. Now, could you take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into what you do?
yeah, absolutely. So, I'm currently the business continuity leader for Panasonic Energy of North America. That is the manufacturing EV battery manufacturing arm of Panasonic. We make at the Gigafactory in Nevada, working with Tesla, we make 6 million EV batteries a day, every single day. And we're currently in the final stages of construction of our DeSoto, Kansas factory, which will be even bigger and produce even more batteries every day. So it's a growing and very fast-paced field and a lot of need. So that's what I do for them. My beginnings in the field of resilience, I would say, come from my military background. I was in the U.S. Air Force for 20 years. My career field was is labeled as command and control, which is kind of this catch-all and can be very unique based on your mission set. So, uh, unlike maybe a helicopter mechanic or something that does one thing, a command and control person literally goes into different units, and whatever that unit's mission set is, they help lead that unit through crisis situations. So it's basically crisis leadership in an EOC type environment. And so I've spent 20 years in 58 different countries, everything from anti-piracy in Yemen and Djibouti, Captain Phillips rescue, Haiti earthquake, Japan earthquake, aircraft crashes in Kyrgyzstan in the UK, drug interdiction stuff in Colombia. If there's lions, tigers, and bears somewhere, I was pretty much there. I did stints in Afghanistan, Iraq, various other locations as well. So I had a deep background in dealing and bringing organizations through dynamic crisis type situations. And I looked to leverage that when I got out. And so I got into emergency management business continuity. And when I retired, I went to work for DFW International Airport as their senior BC and EM and built their program up to by far the most advanced and innovative EM program in all of aviation. And then Panasonic recruited me away to do something very similar for manufacturing in the EV space.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm interested to hear what you've got to say. There's obviously a lot of experience to draw from.
Perfect.
In our first segment, we're going to talk about presenting risk and mitigation strategies as a business competitive advantage. So, what kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, there's a whole spectrum of risks, of course, and some risks you're not really going to turn an active shooter into a business competitive advantage. I mean, you can approach it in a certain way where your brand comes out the other end uh, untarnished and actually be, especially if you're seen as doing the right thing and supporting people and being empathetic to the effects and impacts to your customers and your employees and things like that. So there are ways to minimize that impact. But what we're talking about really is I did this study with Harvard and MIT, and I did a lot of information gathering. The crux of the deal was thinking like a chief resilience officer. So bringing resilience up to that C-suite level of strategic thinking and looking for opportunities, being able to read the tea leaves of future risk of like supply chain or uh, um, federal regulations, things like that could come down the pike, and having your company put mitigation strategies in place that would actually allow you to take advantage when the rest of your competition is impacted, right? So I always tell people like the benefit you get from being the most resilient company in a space, whatever your market is when the, let's say, supply chain disruption or port closure because of a labor union strike on the West Coast closes the ports, all of your competitors are going to drop. Because you're more resilient, you've planned, you've prepared better, you don't drop as far. And then because you have a plan to get out and you're really, well prepared, your climb out trajectory is steeper than the competitions, and you end up higher up so that you're back in the fight, you're back in the game before they are. And now because you're there, you get to set the rules of engagement in this new battle space. I use a lot of military terms or whatever, but you get to set the terms of engagement. So companies will often have a strategy like where they're like, over the next 5 years, we're going to get 10% market share from our biggest competitor or whatever. Does disruptions occur constantly? On average, once a quarter every year, there's some kind of disruption somewhere. So inevitably it's going to happen. And if you're better prepared, you can actually gain more than 10% market share in a single quarter, as opposed to a 5-year plan if you're more resilient. So it's thinking like that. Um, and sometimes it's using your resilience as a weapon. I think that's another paradigm shift I try to get people to think about, where doing what's good for your company, you can also kind of do it in a way that handicaps your competitor, right? I'll give an example at Panasonic. The CEO came to me and said, when the port of LAX was backed up out into the sea and you saw the satellite photos of ships everywhere, he said, Dave, I'm really concerned about the supply chain issues. I'm really concerned about our port, stuff like that. So let me look into it, sir. So I did some stuff, did some analysis, came back and said, hey, I've got two plans for you. One's short term, one's long term. Short term, simple. We need to keep more stuff on hand. We need to source stuff more locally from the US and Canada or from North America. And we can do that this way and this way. I said, the other one's a little more interesting. He's like, hit me. I said, well, I think we need to take 10% of our containers that are coming into LAX and we need to move them to other ports. And thinking strategically, I kind of knew what section of the country our new factory was going to be built. So I said, we can use this to our advantage because we can start moving things over to that side of the world. I said, it's going to cost us about $86,000 a month to then ship those containers back to Nevada through these other ports. But I said, the real trick with ports is the tent pole for getting port space, docking space, warehousing, transloading, trucking. All those contracts take a lot of time to put into place. So we can start doing that now with 10% of our cargo containers and our raw materials containers. And then we can write those contracts in such a way that we have the right of first refusal to expand our operation at that port with that company before anybody else can. So inevitably, history has shown the LA or the West Coast Dock Workers Port Union have consistently striked every time the contracts come up. And I said, it's coming up. And I said, if we do that, then when those ports shut down, we can pivot to the other ports, expand our operations, and when LG and Samsung and Cattle come looking for port space, we can take it away from them and deny them that port space that they're going to desperately want and need to move their stuff into the country. So that's a way you can be more resilient and make it a business competitive advantage. That's the kind of thinking I'm talking about.
Now, you gave the example that an executive approached you. How do you go about approaching executives with this information? If, assuming and using your example, you weren't approached, how do you go about telling executives, hey, guess what? Red flag, we got a risk.
So I always tell people one of the most important steps you can do in the beginning is when I go into any new company, any new leadership set, I create a really comprehensive survey of very simple questions on a scale of 1 to 10. How important is your brand image? On a scale of 1 to 10 is this. And I had all these questions, and I give that to that senior executive staff, and I take those informations back. Then I schedule one-on-one interviews with them to get clarity on their answers. And if I see something that's a little off, I'm like, well, why did you decide this was a 3? And I try to understand that. I take all of that data back. And then when I'm doing a risk analysis of a particular risk, I know that when I'm scoring that risk, a very detailed, very metric driven scoring of the risk, not just the 5 by 5 simple, what's the likelihood? What's the probability? What's the impact? No, it's what's the velocity? What's our vulnerability on a scale of, yada, yada, boom, 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 but all those deals. And then I'm using the executive weighting of their critical business impact factors that they care about, that keep them up at night, that they're concerned about. And I'm aligning everything with their concerns, wants, needs, and strategic vision of the company so that when I come back to them with a risk and it's analyzed in that way, it immediately resonates with senior leadership because it's fully in alignment with what they've said that they care about and are worried about, right? It's important to them.
Right.
So that's a big piece of that.
Now, you also mentioned some of your competitors. So how do you use risk to sell your product to other clients and potential clients, saying, hey, we address our risk? So how do you go about communicating all this bad news for a competitive advantage with your clients?
Yeah, so I think there is a concern in companies that oh, we shouldn't really be transparent about what risks we're concerned about. I think that could possibly be true if you're not doing what you need to do to prevent and mitigate those risks. Then you probably shouldn't be open kimono about what you're facing. But when you're showing that you have extremely dedicated, advanced, professional risk management resilience team that is constantly working on these things and looking for ways to make them better, and you can show the work that's been done and really tout your ability, then it becomes a thing where you can kind of say, look, we're ISO 27001, we're ISO 22301, we're ISO 9001. Let's and really be able to take a data driven approach and turn that into data visualization. What I always tell people is, like, when I present things to senior executives or that they take, I give them things a lot of times that they carry with them and take to meetings with Tesla or Japan or other places, because they're sexy. They're power boat. There's like selling a power boat, right? I'm selling our resilience in a very effective manner to go, we're the most resilient battery company on the planet. And when the port breaks down, we're going to be good. When there's a regulatory shift, we're gonna be operational no matter what. If there's a fire, we've thought about, designed through infrastructure, through technology. We've done all these things so that our core business isn't decapitated. We might lose product, but we're going to keep building more product because we can make 6 million a day, and we make 6 million a day every day, nonstop, 365 days a year. And so when the chips are down, you're going to, if you come with us, you know that you're always going to have access to your product. And I challenge you to go to Cattle or Samsung and see if their program is even close to what ours is, and see if they even talk to you about it. And
Yeah.
that's where they go, oh, okay, this is interesting now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Transparency sometimes only goes so far, and they don't want to share some of that information. We've only got 2 minutes left, by the way. Holy cow, we're really flying through this one. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else you'd like to share with regards to risk and competitive advantage?
Yeah, the other thing I tell people is, typically business disruptions, crisis events, emergencies, the genesis of our field is really in that emergency management space after September 11th, Katrina, stuff like this. And it was built around a jurisdictional state kind of thing. And when problems occur at those levels, it's really a black hole of money, right? They throw money, resources, and people to the problem until the problem goes away. And that's not really a problem for jurisdictions or states or whatever, because they just take more taxpayers' money and throw money in the hole, right? In a business, in a private corporation, that's a loss leader. And so you don't get a really good voice at a table to implement change and stuff like that if you're a loss leader. So when you're in in the private sector. I'm really trying to always reframe resilience measures, mitigation strategies, risk assessments as a return on value, a protection of the brand, all these you know, things that are going to protect their market position and protect revenue streams and enhance their image, and use that resiliency as that way. So then you're not seen as a loss leader. You're seen as a pivotal part of what makes the company competitive.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much. That we've come to the end of our first segment. We were talking about using risk as a competitive advantage. We're talking with David Young today, and we will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.